You can probably imagine the kind of things that went on in the imperial harems of ancient China. Romance, sex, a little bit of seduction, maybe some scandal. But what if I told you there was a more secretive, heavily guarded place within the already secluded Forbidden City? A place where rules and regulations governed not just the imperial couple, but also the emperor's relationship with his concubines and consorts. To understand what happened next, you need to know more about the structure of the harem. They needed to make sure everything was perfect for the emperor and his chosen consort. It was about ensuring she was ritually pure and ready to bear the emperor's child. The process started with a spiritual bath. The consort would be covered in a mixture of herbs and flowers and left to soak for hours. This was not only meant to cleanse her body, but also to prepare her for conception. The consort was only allowed to visit for a few hours, and every minute was carefully planned. The competition for the emperor's attention was fierce, and the consorts were always wary of each other's moves. They knew that one wrong step could cost them their place in the emperor's heart, and they were unafraid to take drastic measures to protect their status. The emperor's choices were influenced by palace officials who wanted to keep the peace and maintain order. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating historical insights. Until next time, keep exploring the secrets of the past. Thank you for watching. We hope you learned something new and exciting about the Forbidden City. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our latest content. Thanks for joining us on this journey through history. We'll see you next time. The consorts had to follow strict rules and rituals, and the stakes were always high. The story of the Imperial Harem reminds us that even in the most intimate of moments, politics and tradition play a powerful role. The officials were trained to spot any signs of rivalry or conflict, and they took swift action to stop it. If they caught a consort plotting against another, they would intervene and punish the guilty party. In some cases, this meant banishing a consort from the harem altogether. In other cases, it meant ending a consort's life. The officials knew that the emperor couldn't stay awake for long, and they needed to make the most of his time. The emperor's bedroom was a dangerous place. One wrong move could mean losing your head. For example, during the reign of Emperor Li Yu, one of the concubines accused another of practicing witchcraft and having an affair with an official. As a result, the accused concubine was put to death along with the alleged lover. Another infamous case involved a concubine named Yang Guifei, who was so beautiful that the emperor built an entire garden just to gaze at her. But her beauty proved to be her downfall. She was accused of seducing the emperor away from his main wife and plotting to take over the harem. In the end, she was forced to commit suicide along with several of her accomplices. That's why the entire performance had to be timed perfectly. The consort had to start singing and dancing as soon as she entered the room, and she was unallowed to stop until the emperor signaled for a break. Even when the emperor fell asleep, the consort had to stay awake and keep performing. She wasn't allowed to close her eyes or relax until he woke up again. This may seem cruel and unusual, but it was all in the name of duty and tradition. The consort was expected to serve the emperor without complaint, and any sign of disobedience or laziness would result in severe punishment. After the bath, she would be groomed and dressed in fine clothes. Her hair would be styled and adorned with precious jewels, and her makeup would be done with the finest powders and paints. But this wasn't just about making her look beautiful. It was also about making her recognizable as a member of the imperial court. The colors and patterns of her clothes would signify her rank and status, and the jewelry she wore would be a symbol of her loyalty to the emperor. This meant preparing the room, checking for any potential dangers, and ensuring the consort was ready in time. But this was no easy task. She had to be carried on a special stretcher covered in silk to prevent anyone from hiding weapons or poison on it. This was another safety precaution taken by the palace officials to protect the emperor. Once she reached the bedroom, the consort had to wait for the emperor to summon her. This could take hours, and she had to remain completely still until he called for her. When the emperor finally summoned her, the officials knew exactly what to do. They would open the door, allow the consort to enter, and then quickly leave the room, closing the door behind them. The emperor's bedroom was more than just a place for sleeping. It was a symbol of his power and authority. In fact, the emperor and the consort didn't even speak to each other during this encounter. The emperor would lie down on his silk couch, and the consort would sit opposite him on another couch. She would sing and dance for his enjoyment, and the emperor would watch and listen intently. This was not just a form of entertainment. It was also a way for the emperor to assess the consort's beauty and grace. If she performed well, she would be rewarded with praise and gifts. If she didn't, she would be sent back to her chambers without any ceremony. That's why it had to be kept in pristine condition at all times. The officials made sure the bed was made, the curtains were drawn, and the room was clean and well ventilated. They also checked the bedding for any signs of damage and replaced it whenever necessary. But this wasn't just about aesthetics. It was also a matter of safety and security. The officials were trained to look for anything that could pose a threat to the emperor's health or life, such as poisonous insects or hidden weapons. They knew that the emperor's enemies would stop at nothing to harm him, and they were the last line of defense against assassination attempts. In ancient China, the emperor's wife and concubines were divided into three main groups: the royal wife, the noble concubines, and the lowly maids. Each level had its own set of rules and privileges. The highest rank a woman could achieve in the harem was that of the empress. She was the emperor's chief consort and held the most power and influence. Below the empress were the noble concubines, who were also considered the emperor's wives, but had a lower status than the empress. They lived in separate palaces within the Forbidden City, and had their own servants to attend to their needs. The lowest-ranking women in the harem were the maids. Their job was to serve the higher-ranking concubines and wives, and they were not allowed to have any kind of intimate relationship with the emperor. If you want to know what really went on behind those closed doors, then let us dive deep into this secret section of the Forbidden City and uncover the truth about the emperor's bedroom. When we think of ancient Chinese emperors, we usually picture powerful, wealthy men surrounded by beautiful women, and while that is true, these encounters weren't always as glamorous as you might think. But the decision wasn't entirely his. Palace officials played a crucial role in ensuring that the emperor made the right choice, and they had a very clever way of influencing him. Here's how it worked. Every plaque had the name of one of the emperor's women inscribed on it. And each night before the emperor arrived, the officials would arrange these plaques in a particular order on a special table near his bed. The emperor, believing he was choosing his companion freely, would pick a plaque at random and spend the night with the woman whose name was on it. However, what he didn't realize was that these women were carefully selected by the officials. They used this ritual to keep the peace in the palace and make sure the emperor didn't develop a favorite. By controlling who the emperor slept with, they prevented any one woman from gaining too much power. It was a clever strategy that kept the palace stable and everyone in line. In fact, it was a very regimented process full of symbolism, ritual, and lots of waiting. Before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button, so you don't want to miss out on any of our amazing videos. Also, stick around until the end to hear one of the most shocking tales from the Forbidden City. You won't want to miss this. Every evening when the sun began its descent, the emperor would retire to his chambers in the Forbidden City. Ready to choose one of his many wives or concubines to spend the night with? The emperor's bedroom wasn't just a place for intimate moments. It was a battlefield of sorts, where power, politics, and tradition collided. So once the emperor chose his companion for the night, the real work began for the palace officials. But perhaps the most important part of their job was getting the consort ready for her encounter with the emperor. This wasn't just about making her look beautiful. Once she was ready, it was time for the consort to move to the emperor's chamber. Now, you might think that this is where the intimate moment between the emperor and the consort took place, but you'd be wrong. Time was of utmost importance in the emperor's bedroom. Despite all the precautions, rivalries, and jealousies were inevitable in the harem. It might be hard to believe, but this was a real and common occurrence in the Forbidden City. In the end, the emperor's bedroom wasn't just a place of romance and passion, it was a battleground of politics, power, and tradition. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other amazing content.